All right, welcome everybody around the world. Welcome to all my subscribers. So I'm going to do this in a very quick format. So what I was doing over the last few days is um, scrutinizing, for lack of a better term, my theory, the End Days theory that I presented in the book here. Not that there are any holes in the theory, but it's already like a perfect diamond, rock solid, can't be disproven. So anyways, fine tuning everything, not fine tuning, but with a fine tooth comb, combing over everything, looking for any little possible points where I might be able to try and, attack it, the theory, to see if I could find any problems. But no, there aren't. There aren't any holes. So yeah, I've done it the last few days, this type of method, like introspective, like critical, like analysis and dissection of the theory, but it always comes up and holds up true. So it's like a rock solid diamond. So you can get my book on Amazon, like I said before. But this hinges one of the 7 pillars of scriptural proof, because each of these is a prophecy from the Bible that God has given a number for the period of time in relation to the end days. So there's 7 different ones. I know that's a mouthful, but the prophecy of Daniel is a critical one. So anyway, so I've been dissecting this, looking at it like a skeptic would and trying to find things, what skeptics might say and, attacking it like that to see how I could take it down from different angles. So anyways, and in this also, what I want to do for this video is explain it in a way where, so I was telling you, like, that's what I've been doing, right? But I want to explain in this video in a way where I can show people that if anybody else was to scrutinize the theory or to go deeper, that they could see that it's logically true. And now I've thought about how I could do that in a very condensed and quick way. So the easiest way to prove that what I've said about the prophecy of Daniel is true, that I'm not reading too much into the text, that it's actually what the Bible says, okay, quite clearly, we could use the following logic. So we're told in Daniel we're told by Daniel first. Okay, first of all, we have to say that, bullet point list, very simple. We're told by Daniel that there will be a fourth and final beast kingdom. Okay, so the fourth is the final. He describes the 3 that come before it. Okay, it's going to be Babylon, then Medes and Persia, and then Grecia, and then the fourth, which is the final. So there we go. This one little factoid, bullet point number 1. Next point, logically, is that Daniel tells us about the fourth and final beast kingdom in chapter 7. He literally says, I want to know about the fourth and final. And then the angel tells him, well, the fourth and final is like blah, blah, blah. And he is told that the fourth and final beast kingdom would have these 10 kings that rise up. But more importantly, it says that an 11th, would rise up after them. Now, why is this 11th king so special? Why is he important? Well, it says that it's at that time that a measure for them to rule over Israel is given to them. For 3.5 times, they're going to rule. Okay? It's been given into their hands. So their empire, from that point of the 11th king, they would rule over Israel for 3.5 times, which is 1,260 years. Okay, so that's what Daniel tells us. He tells us there's going to be a fourth and final beast kingdom that will come at some point after Grecia. Okay, and this fourth and final beast kingdom, at some point, at its 11th ruler, would have an empire over Israel for 1,260 years. Now, that's factoid number 2 on the bullet point list. Okay, so factoid number 3, very quick, is that those things came true in history, and this is where everything triangulates together. So if we go look at history, in 688 AD, the 11th ruler of Islam, being the 10th caliph, okay, because he had the original founder, and then after him, you had the 10 first caliphs. It was the 10th caliph who was the 11th ruler in 688 AD that built the Dome of the Rock on the Temple Mount, the holy place. Okay? And it's exactly 1,260 years from then, which they ruled over Israel until 1948, the end of the Arab War, as it's called, I believe, but in the end of the World Wars too. But in 1948, Israel was reborn, and the people of God got to return there, Jews and Christians and so forth. Okay, so we see in history that it was fulfilled, but more importantly, what I'm getting to is the logics here, the bullet point list. Like I said, Daniel told us there'd be a fourth beast kingdom. Okay, there'd be Babylon, Medes and Persia, then Greece as the third, and then a fourth. Who is the fourth? Well, he says the fourth would be have the biggest empire of all the other beast kingdoms, and that the fourth beast kingdom wouldn't be like any of the other beast kingdoms, and it wouldn't be like any other kingdom on the earth. It'd be something brand new and unique, but yet also the biggest empire. So those things did come true with Islam because it was a new religion, a new kingdom, new empire, and everything. And they did rule over Israel for over 1260 years, but exactly 1260 years from the Dome of the Rock, which would be the abomination on the Temple Mount. So this is where everything triangulates together. And it all starts with that first domino because God told us through Daniel that the 11th ruler, it was very specific, the 11th ruler would mark that time. Now you have to ask yourself, why is the 11th ruler so important? Well, it's not just that he's number 11 and that 11 special. No, that's irrelevant. What makes it so special? Well, and unique? Well, it was him, the 11th ruler, who built the Dome of the Rock, the abomination. Okay? And in Daniel chapter 11, it only mentions the abomination in a couple places. I covered them all tonight in my study for this and everything. So I know all the places that the word sanctuary occurs, sacrifice, perpetual, continual, all this and that there, right? Did all that over the last few days and tonight. And it's in Daniel chapter 11, around verse 30 or so, where it says, and it's talking about the final beast kingdom, where it says that out of him, out of one of the rulers, strong ones do come. I think it's talking about the first ruler, right? But I'll get into that detail later, right? But very quickly in chapter 11, it talks about that out of one of the kings of the final beast kingdom come out strong ones, other strong rulers or whatnot, that build the abomination. Okay, so the abomination is only mentioned in a few places, like 2, maybe 3 places. And I'll cover them all for my study in this, and I'll probably mention them all if I can in this video here. And that's one of them. So if we know that the abomination that will be built on the Temple Mount is to be built, this is logic, is to be built by the final beast kingdom. It's not to be built by Grecia that rules out Antiochus and all that. Jesus even said the abomination will come after him, right? There will be a future event after Jesus, after Jesus was on the earth, and future event to him. So it's definitely not from the Grecian kingdom. We know that it's the final beast kingdom, the fourth one, that's going to build the abomination. Okay, and where it triangulates over is if we know that a period of 3.5 times is given to their empire from the 11th ruler, and then we notice that the 11th ruler and the time where you take that measure from is precisely the year where that 11th ruler built the abomination. That's where it all triangulates together. So that's the proof for all of this here. That's how you know that it's not just me reaching out, looking at those bare, basic, simple, logical things. Like, what was that, 4 bullet points? We can see that clearly this must be the case. Okay? Again, quick recap, right? Because even me, it's a little confusing to me right now. So let's clarify for everybody again. There's going to be a fourth beast kingdom after Grecia. Now, there are lots of empires after Grecia, lots of empires that even ruled over Israel after Grecia. But what makes the fourth and final beast kingdom different? Well, it's going to be the final one. It's going to rule and have a presence there until the end of days, until Messiah arrives. Messiah and them are going to fight and all of that. That's the difference about the final beast kingdom. The fourth one, it's the final. Okay? So it's not going to come right away after Grecia. Not necessarily. If we look at history, we can see many empires came and ruled over for short periods of time, such as the Roman and then the Byzantine Empire, right? And, at the end of the Byzantine, the Sassanid Empire, whatever you call it. So, but anyways, it can be summed up as Roman then Byzantine, right? And then the Byzantine Empire fell to the Islamic Empire. So that was around 630 AD. So that's history when you apply history to the Bible. So the fact is that Daniel told us that there would be a fourth beast kingdom, not just any kingdom, but a fourth beast kingdom, okay? And it would be the final, it would be the largest, It would be different from all of the other beast kingdoms, and it would be unlike the other kingdoms on the planet. So if we go and read in the chapters of Daniel, he tells us in many places, he tells us in 3 locations about the identity of the Grecian kingdom. So he identifies, he talks about them as animals, and he identifies who they are. This is the first, I think he even says Grecia in one place. So everybody knows that he fully details the Grecian rise and the fall of the Grecian kingdom. And he mentions in those 3 locations how when the Grecian kingdom falls from its first horn, who is Alexander, it splits into 4 sub-empires, right? But that was like 3 or 200 BC. That's a lot of time from when Islam comes in and conquers in 640 AD. Okay, when they conquered the Byzantine Empire in 630 something, and then they conquered Israel in 640 AD, right? So that's a vast period of time historically that transpired, right? But Daniel knew about all this because Daniel was here telling us. This is a little epiphany I had that helped. Daniel isn't here to bore us with details about all these other lesser kingdoms, is he? No, he's here to tell us about what? The beast kingdoms. So Daniel told us about Babylon, Medes and Persia, Grecia, and the 4th and final beast kingdom, right? That's the logic. He didn't tell us about all these other Byzantine and Roman and all this and that there. He did mention 1 or 2 things, I believe, about Rome in there, but they're not beast kingdoms. All these other empires, they're irrelevant to Daniel's story. So Daniel told us about the beast kingdoms. And if you keep this in mind, when you're reading the chapters of Daniel, right? So in the 7th chapter, it does talk about the 4th beast kingdom a lot, right? In chapter 8, it talks about the fall of the Grecian beast kingdom for quite a bit. I think maybe even the whole chapter. In chapter 9, it goes into the typical chapter about the Messiah, this and that there, and how, and there's not too much pertaining to what we're talking about here in chapter 9. Then in chapter 10, there's pretty much nothing in chapter 10. It's like poetic talk type stuff. Chapter 11, again, it's talking about the fall of the Grecian kingdom. Now, if you track it down, it explicitly talks about Grecia falling, splitting into the 4 sub-kingdoms again, which are still part of the Grecian beast kingdom. Okay, it's just after its first horn fell, it split into 4, but it's still part of the Grecian kingdom. Okay, that's the first 5 verses of chapter 11. Okay, and then it spends 15 verses, okay, describing what comes after the Grecian kingdom. Now, like I said, in the 3 places it talks about the Grecian kingdom and helps identify which kingdom it is, as Grecia. In those 3 places in Daniel, he talks about the rise and the fall of Grecia, right? So in chapter 11, it identifies Grecia, talks about its fall, and then after the fall of Grecia, it has 15 verses about what's transpiring after the fall of Grecia. Okay? So like I said, this is that vast span of time between when Grecia as a kingdom fell, because I believe Rome conquered Grecia in like 130 something BC or whatever, and then you could rightfully say Rome was the big boy on campus, and then came the Byzantine Empire, right? But that's the point. Grecia fell, and then it's describing it might, I can't remember offhand, right? But I'm saving time for the video. But I just spent hours reading it all. But then it gets into, for 15 verses, basically the time in between. But that's irrelevant here because the important thing is God's talked about the starting measure and the finishing point. So a little bit of fluff in between isn't that important because we know that the final beast kingdom is the final one. It's going to be right up until the time that God and Messiah arrive. So, and we already have those points fixed from when the abomination will be built and the completion of the scattering. 3.5 times leads you to the rebirth of Israel, and then you have 75 final years to take you to the 1335th, right? And this is further concreted in when you go from the time of the Dome of the Rock back in time. 1290 years takes you to 602 BC. So you see, which is when Nebuchadnezzar took away the continual sacrifice, which Daniel 12 says as well. So it is pretty concreted in the interpretation of Daniel's prophecy, and it does perfectly tie into history, is fulfilled by history, right? So it is pretty solid, right? That's why I say it's rock solid like diamond, right? It cannot be disproven. And if you go through and read the chapters, like I said, chapter 11, you get through the first 5 verses, the fall of Grecia, next 15 verses about what happens at the end of Grecia and what's in between. And you'll notice when you get down towards verse 20 or so in chapter 11, it then talks about a transition point. Okay, it bores you with king of the north and king of the south and all this stuff that's going on for 15 verses. And then it gets to a point where the king of the north, I think, who is the one that ends up being victorious in all of this, it seems like, he was the big shot, he just dies or disappears or something. Okay, and then it starts talking about essentially who's going to get the kingdom. Okay, now in history, this would be the fall of the Byzantine Empire to the power of Islam, right? To the Empire of Islam in around 630 something AD. But nonetheless, right? So it's talking about that king, left, died, whatever it was, and then it talks about an exactor will pass over the honor of the kingdom, right? So it's talking about a handover of the kingdom. This is in the text, right? I'm not reaching for anything. That's what it says. So if you're reading the story and listening to it and take it seriously as a story and following it, like I did in all the subjects, you'll see that's where it ends up. It ends up with the king of the north, or whichever one it was, being the big shot, but then he dies away. Then it talks about the next verses, an exactor will pass over the honor of the kingdom. Okay, and then it says a despicable one will come stand in the place and take that honor and take over the kingdom. Now, who is this despicable one? Now, ironically, it then spends the entire rest of the chapter talking about this despicable one. So you can't just say, oh, well, he's, because if you look at it from top to bottom, it's talking about so many different kings and figures and subjects, right? And the despicable one is just like number 10 or whatever in the list by the time you get to the bottom. So if you're thinking about it like that, you'll just be like, oh, well, this is just another one they're talking about. What's the big deal about him, right? It's just another title, the despicable one, right? But it spends the rest of the chapter, 20 something verses, talking about this one figure. It never switches the subject into another individual. It talks about him in great detail because he conquers Israel, and it gives all the detail how he starts a new religion with a new God that his own family didn't even know about. His own fathers and forefathers didn't even know about, it says. Okay, temples to this God. They'll become very wealthy. They'll go out pillaging, conquering, and everything. That they will change the law of God. It says that. And even the festivals and the calendars, right? And this is what Islam did when they conquered. Everything, there's so much stuff that Daniel says will take place, and all of it came true, right? And it's in chapter 11, around verse 30, where it says, and strong ones out of him, so strong ones out of the despicable one will rise out. That's probably the caliphs, the strong ones, and they will appoint the abomination, okay? That would be the 11th ruler, the 10th caliph, okay, who built the Dome of the Rock in 688. And it was at that point, once they had, conquered even the Temple Mount and put their foreign gods monument on top of it, once they had done that, that marked the span of time where they would reign, the 3.5 times, the 1260 years. Okay, so even Jesus concreted this in. He quoted the prophecy of Daniel, which is talking about all this. And he said, when you see in the future the abomination standing where it ought not in the holy place, okay? And the holy place is the biblical term for the Temple Mount. So when you see the abomination standing in the holy place, this is a future event to Jesus. Antiochus was like 200 years before Jesus. Jesus saying in the future, when you see the abomination standing, he said, flee to the hills. So Jesus gave instruction for a final scattering. And in Daniel 12, verse 7, at the end of chapter 11, let me put it this way. So verse 30 is very near the end of chapter 11. It ends around like verse 45 or so. So it spends the whole end of the chapter up to the verse 45 talking about that despicable one, how he'll create this new religion to a new deity that will conquer Israel, build upon the Temple Mount a temple to this foreign deity. He'll get all praise and riches and this and that there, redo the law of God, change the law of God and everything. I mean, they did all that. It all came true. So it clearly has to be them. And the chapter 11 ends with the fall of the despicable one. Okay, so what has happened here in Daniel using logic is Daniel has told us that there'll be four beasts. He tells us all about the first three, even about the third one when it falls, right? Like I said, in three different places, it talks about the rise and the fall and the identity of the Grecian beast kingdom. And then it says there will be a fourth and a final. Daniel doesn't tell us about any other subkingdoms and empires that came in between. He only tells us about the beasts. So when he told us this transition point after the fall of Grecia, okay, when Alexander fell, sorry, and it split into the subkingdoms, it tells us about those subkingdoms, okay, at the fall of Grecia, as it says so in the verses for those 15 verses, okay, and then it's talking about the transition of the kingdom over, right? So at that point in history, that would have been a Byzantine control over the land, and then Islam came in. Islam is the final beast kingdom, so that's the only one Daniel's going to tell us about. So after Grecia fell, the kingdom went over to Islam. Okay, and that's what occurred. Okay, so Daniel accurately foretold everything. So at the end of chapter 11, you then flip over to chapter 12 because they didn't have chapter numbers back then. It's just a continuation, but nonetheless, the end of chapter 11, right after it talks about the despicable one for half a chapter, it then, so that's him describing the final beast kingdom. If he didn't describe it there, he would have never really described it, right? But that's where he described the rise and the establishment of the final beast kingdom. So that was the end of all those visions for the 11 chapters of Daniel. Daniel's received all these visions, and that wraps it up. And then he turns around, and in chapter 12 there, in verse 7, he asked the angel, "Oh, till when is the end of these wonders?" Like he wants to know numbers, like how long, how long is this going to last for? When's it going to be? And this and that there. And God tells him from the completion of the scattering of the holy ones, there's 3.5 times, and then finished are these. So all those things that he saw, the rise of the despicable one, this abomination being built on the Temple Mount, and all of this terrible stuff happening, the subjugating of the people and all this, and even beheading and enslaving and exile. But when you factor in that Jesus is quoting Daniel's prophecy and saying, when you see the abomination, scatter and flee for those, then you understand that the completion of the scattering definitely did occur at the Dome of the Rock, because even the Lord and Savior said to scatter. And if he tells you to scatter, that's the once and only scattering that you do. You don't keep doing it later. You scatter once. That's the completion of the scattering. So it's confirmed from like different angles that 688 AD was the completion of the scattering. So in chapter 12, verse 7, where he says, from the completion of the scattering, it's 3.5 times. Then you take it from 688, the 3.5 times, and that takes you to 1948. Finished our roll of these. So the completion of the scattering, so they get out of Israel in 688, and then in 1948, they come back into Israel. It's a perfect fulfillment, right? So that's how you know that the prophecy of Daniel, my interpretation and all of that, is completely accurate. So that's why I urge everybody to go to Amazon, get my book. Okay, I'm pretty sure it's got international copyrights. You can't photocopy it, but I urge you to share it with people. I'm not telling you to go buy lots of copies and share it. That would be nice, but you can hand your book over and share it with a friend or share it with the church and lend it. You know what I mean? But I urge everybody to go do that and help direct people to my channel. Tell them about the theory. It's the 2023 is past, but 2024, okay? And why not wait even next year as well, just in case? You know what I mean? We have to be ready. It's high times to be ready, waiting and watching. Okay, we're not going to worry and fuss about certainly not going to worry and fuss about hours, days, weeks, months, or whatnot. We're going to worry about years, the imminent years. But 2024, by the numbers, is going to be the year, right? But we need to be on high watch. I would say even 2025 and a little bit further if it doesn't happen in 2024, right? I'm not trying to pull a Harold Camping on anybody, but I urge everybody to go get the book, share. I have tons of videos on YouTube. I've been warning everybody about this for 7 years. My books have been out for a few years now, right? But I urge everybody to get the book, to read it, to study it. Okay, it's only $11.11, very affordable. Once you do that, then you'll have the knowledge of the 7 pillars of scriptural proof, the 7 different prophecies. Okay, one of them, I mean, 5 of these are my own unique discovery. Nobody else has made. One of them, the first chapter, 6,000 years of mankind, all mapped out on the pages with verses for all the numbers. Every single number is biblically supplied with the verses given on the page with the maths broken down for everybody step by step from the first year to the end of the 6,000, and it's 2024. You can't make this stuff up. It's right there in front of you. Okay? So there's no deception. And then even prophecy from First Enoch that coincides with 1948. Okay? There's prophecies from Isaiah that nobody else has found. There's tons and tons of stuff. 7 pillars of scriptural proof. I made a video recently where I listed off all the other reasons, even if they're not pillars of proof. There are about, 24 or so that I found. Once I went through all my videos and everything from the last few years, there's 24. I mean, one of the discoveries I made after publishing that book right there was that there are exactly 11.11 times mathematically. You can't go up or down by 0.01 or anything. I don't think you can go up or down by 0.001. 11.11 times, and the time is 360 years from, I think it's the birth of Seth. It's in my book, right? But it's from the birth of Seth, most likely, I think it is, the first mortal, born mortal, until Jesus. And I think it was Jesus's death offhand, not his birth or his baptism. But nonetheless, it's 11.11 times till Jesus. Okay, and then after that, there's exactly 666 years until the abomination, the Dome of the Rock, was built. Okay, and then after that point, there's exactly 2 periods of 666, which equal 1335. They take you to 2024. So you got 1111 leading you to Jesus, the Messiah. So that kind of tells you when Messiah would arrive, right? If you had this knowledge back then as an ancient person, you got 6,000 years, God's divine week, right? 1111 will lead you to the Messiah, right? Because Messiah will lead you to 1111, which is the rapture, Revelation 11:11, and elsewhere, right? And then, but after the Messiah is killed in part by Satan, right? So after Messiah dies, then you got 666, and after the first 666, you get the abomination built, right? And all this stuff that Daniel foresaw. Then after that, 2 666s, which is the 1335, right? And then bump the end. So, and if you try to crunch the maths, it's 666.66. But nonetheless, I mean, it's pretty undeniable, right? And this is because the first period is 4,000 years. There's 4,000 years exactly from the birth of Seth until it was either Jesus's baptism or his death, one of the two. I can't remember, but it's in the book. And then from there, it was his baptism. And then from his baptism in 23 AD, there is 2,000 years until the end of 2023, hence the year 2024. So, and according to year flux, as I've said before, just in case anybody's crunching numbers here and being smart, as you should do, year flux is something logical I talk about in the book that everybody should apply in everything, because we don't know what month or day an event took place on that God's taking his measures from. We might know the year, but we don't know. Like, for example, 1948, Israel were born. Well, they were born in like March or May or something, not December time, right? So if you're taking a measure from an ancient time, you know, God's going to take it from a point in a year. You know what I mean? He's going to take it from the start or the end or the middle. There's a 12-month difference between January and December. So if both events took place in the year 2000, let's just say, they're still 12 months apart. So you have to allow for year flux. So 2023 could have been the time of the end. I prepared in case it was, but it came and passed. But no worries, because year flux. We still have 12 months to wait as of the end of 2023. So until the end of 2024, it could very well be, by the numbers, exactly when Daniel said it would happen. So anyways, that's it for the logics tonight. But like I said, it's quite simple when you apply it. There's the 4th beast kingdom. He talks about the rise and fall of the 3rd. Then he talks about the 4th. Where does he introduce the detail about the 4th? It's in chapter 11, like I said, in around verse 20 or so. And then it spends the entire rest of the chapter talking about the one who founds the final beast kingdom. And it talks about the founding of the final beast kingdom. And then at the end of that chapter, Daniel's exhausted from all of his visions, and then asks God for some numbers. And then God gives him numbers. And then that's the end of the book of Daniel, right? So, and it's all the numbers I just mentioned with the 1260 and the 1335 and the 1290. So anyways, there you go. So that's the roadmap to 2024, but I got to get going. So anyways, if you do go on Amazon and get this book, which is about the proof for the end days, I urge you also to get this, because God might say this is a greater work. This is the theology. This is the true systematic theology that Jesus and God, the New Testament, the Bible, the Tanakh gave us. It's all right there, scripturally proven, like it says. Every page is scripture. They could call my bluff. Pretty sure every single page does. Right? Hey, look, verses. Right? Another random page. Right? Verses. Another random page. Where is it? Any verses there? That's where I talk about I wrote a few parables of my own, so that doesn't count. So those few pages are about parables that I wrote. So I urge everybody to get that, because that's the true theology. It's very different from what the churches have been teaching for 1,500 years. It could cost you your salvation if you're following the wrong thing. This book's like $23. This one's $11.11. So altogether, it's like $33. It's pretty cheap. Most systematic theologies, by the way, like by the fact that this is actually the true theology and proven, the original untainted theology proven, I think it's worth a lot more, but I price it at 23 because I was expecting the end to hopefully come in 2023. And that's the reason why I price it is that. But nonetheless, systematic theologies can be up to 500 to 1,000 pages, right? And now, even ones that aren't over 500 pages, they can cost $500, right? Systematic theologies take the most extreme amount of work to do, right? So my systematic theology took a lot of time. I even crippled my hands writing both of these books. Did it a second time writing the other one, right? But I didn't want to. It's only, what is it, like 200 pages, right? So it's not a 500-page book, but I mean, still, it's almost half of a 500-page book, which would cost hundreds of dollars elsewhere. But I only priced it at $23, right? This isn't just like you're buying some other Christian author book and just pointless rambling. This is defining. This is a systematic theology. It's systematically defining the theology from top to bottom. Okay. The true Christianity. Okay, it's got Christology, theodicy, which is something I think most people never cover. It's giving plausible scriptural based answers for the greatest mysteries and woes that we go through as humans. Apologetics, which is quite similar, okay, of the original and true Christianity. So this is my book. Sometimes I think our beloved YT puts ads in my videos because they think I'm promoting somebody else's book, but I'm the author of this, hence my channel name here. But anyways, as the author name. Well, the channel name is my author name, that's why. But I urge everybody to go get the book. It's well worth it. It's $23, but it will be controversial for you because, but just bear with it. Stick with it, right? There's no Christian minister could read this book and not be converted and changed by the end of it. There's no way. If you read it the way it's written, so methodically and in the way I've systematically written it, breaking down and digesting everything, it's just too good, right? It's too effective. And this took a lot of time. So I broke down the index and everything, the chapters into key topics like who and what was Jesus, who and what is Satan, right? What did Jesus come to do? Why did Jesus have to die? Did Jesus, and this is for like critics of Christianity, did Jesus defy the Old Testament, its precepts or law? Did he fulfill the Old Testament and its messianic criteria? Then we got the chapter where I tackle atonement and sacrifice, baptism, and forgiveness, right? Look at all these subtopics, right? So you think of anything you could think of, right? There, sacrifice our old sinning self. Well, there you go, page 111. Past sins forgiven, not the future, page 112. Do not sin after baptism, page 113, right? So was Paul confusing or logical? Page 152. So I urge everybody to get the book. It's well worth it, right? And it's important because nobody else is teaching the true theology out there. This isn't just a pitch for book sales. I haven't sold many copies, and this is a work for God. This really does deserve to sell more. There's so much books out there that sell, and they don't contain the golden truth like this does here. I worked hard for 20 plus years to get this theology down pat, and I worked very hard to write the book, both of these books, and plus my own discoveries in this book as well, right? So it took a lot of hard work, and yes, It involves money because it's a book, but guess what? I deserve it. I worked hard for it. Every other author writes books and charges money for them. I'm only making a few dollars in each book, anyways, right? But I've done all that I can with my YouTube channels, just for people to understand. Once again, for 7 years, since 2016, I've been warning people about this. I've been saying it. I was one of the first person people talking about 2023, 2024, all the way back to 2016 on my older YouTube channels. And I've been saying it for a long time. I've made literally hundreds of videos. I've literally got about 400 videos right now up. Most of them, not all of them, are on this topic, that I've done for free without charge, devoting hours of my life every day to doing these studies for people, to make videos and all that. So I've worked very, very hard for free. I don't make any money on my channels. I'm not monetized, nothing like that. I've never made a penny, right? So me writing these books and working very hard and getting arthritis in my hands as a result of it, okay, because I worked so hard at it, I deserve to make money on my books like any other author would, just like any Bible publisher does. Okay, but a lot of people scrutinize me for saying, "Oh, buy my books." Like, "Oh, you're just in it for the money." No, it's not about that. I've done more than enough of my part. Trust me on that one there. Most people would never bother doing 10% of the hard work I did every day, virtually every day, for viewers out there. And most of the viewers never even come and watch the videos, and I just keep faithfully doing it anyways. Well, I've got 400 videos out there. So you can't say that I haven't done work hard, and I've worked hard for free and not asked for a penny. I've never asked for money from anybody. So, anyways, I got to get going because I'm late. Um, you can get the books on Amazon. But again, I do warn you, the systematic theology, it's not some radical thing. It is the original Christian theology, but it will challenge what most of the churches teach. Okay? Most denominations that people are in, when they read this book here, it's going to really throw you off and upset you, because you will learn, unfortunately, that something major theologically has been gotten wrong. So, pretty much no denomination is safe. Pretty much every denomination has faltered majorly, and it's all part of the great falling away. So, I warn you on that one there. So, if you dive into the book not knowing that, you're going to be sorely surprised, but for the better, because it is the true theology, and it's rock solid. It's a bulletproof theology. It's absolutely rock solid, tested and tried. It's logical, reasonable, sensible. So we won't get into that. I'm late. I gotta go see my family members. So um, I don't have time to explain that right now, but I do have lots of other videos on my channel. I have some bigger, more popular videos where I go on a longer explanation, I think for like an hour or something. It's got like 2,000, 2,500 views. Um, that just happened to be one video I just did one day that got popular, but I've made lots of videos, and I have like little mini series as well that tackle certain topics. Um, but anyways, I'm not here to polarize people, because Christians are very polarized people. That they'll be like, "Oh, well, you believe different than me, and I don't like you anymore," and then they'll get angry at me and start saying mean things. But if you want to learn and this and that, there, feel free to watch the videos, get the book, study it, and I'm sure you would agree. Everybody else seems to. It's only people who don't take the time to listen who don't agree. So, but anyways, God bless. Take care, everybody. I gotta get going. So, anyways.